The sun hung low over the quiet outskirts of Jefferson City, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Route 54. Federal Judge Marianne Delgado, a woman of unyielding integrity and sharp intellect, adjusted her glasses as she pulled her silver sedan to the side of the road. Her briefcase, stuffed with legal documents and exactly $2,000 in cash for a charity donation she planned to drop off later, sat securely on the passenger seat. She had just left a late court session, her mind still buzzing with the day's arguments. Little did she know the next few minutes would unravel a chain of events that would ripple across the nation. 2 police cruisers, their lights off, slowed to a halt behind her. Marianne glanced in her rearview mirror, expecting a routine check. She rolled down her window as 2 officers, clad in dark blue uniforms, approached. Officer Rick Tanner, a burly man with a permanent scowl, led the way, his partner, Officer Greg Holloway, trailing with a smirk. Both had reputations in the small town for their aggressive tactics, particularly toward minorities, a fact Marianne, as a Latina judge, was all too aware of. License and registration, Tanner barked, his tone dripping with disdain as he peered into the car. Marianne, ever composed, handed over her documents with a polite nod. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. Tanner snatched the papers, barely glancing at them. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am," he ordered, ignoring her question. Holloway circled to the passenger side, his eyes locking onto the briefcase. Marianne hesitated, her judicial instincts flaring. "I'd like to know the reason for this stop," she pressed, reaching for her phone to record the encounter. That's when it happened. Tanner yanked the door open, grabbing her arm with a force that made her wince. "I said step out," he snarled. Holloway, seizing the moment, popped the passenger door and snatched the briefcase. Marianne struggled, her voice rising. "You're violating my rights. This is illegal." But her protests were drowned by the officer's mocking laughter. Inside the briefcase, Holloway found the $2,000 in crisp bills. His eyes gleamed with greed. Well, looks like we got ourselves a rich judge," he muttered, pocketing the cash with practiced ease. Tanner tightened his grip, shoving Marianne against the car. "Keep quiet, or this gets worse," he hissed, his racism thinly veiled in every word. To them, she wasn't a respected judge, she was just another target. The assault was swift and brutal. They planted a small bag of white powder in her car, staging a scene to justify their actions. "Drug possession," Tanner declared, cuffing her hands behind her back. Marianne's mind raced, her legal training kicking in even as fear gripped her. She knew this was a setup, a blatant abuse of power fueled by prejudice. But with no witnesses and her phone knocked to the ground, she felt the weight of helplessness. 5 minutes later, the world shifted. As Tanner and Holloway dragged Marianne toward their cruiser, a low hum filled the air. From the horizon, a drone emerged, its cameras whirring. Unbeknownst to the officers, a local journalist, Sam Carter, had been testing his new aerial equipment nearby, capturing footage of the rural roads. The drone's lens zeroed in on the scene, recording every second of the officer's misconduct in stunning clarity. Sam A wiry man in his 30s with a passion for uncovering truth watched the live feed on his laptop from a mile away. His jaw dropped as he saw the officers rob Marianne and plant evidence. "This is gold," he whispered, his fingers trembling as he hit the record button. He knew the footage could destroy careers and save a life. Without hesitation, he uploaded the clip to a secure cloud server and dialed 911, reporting the incident with urgency. Back on Route 54, the officers were oblivious. They shoved Marianne into the cruiser, her face pressed against the window, tears of rage mixing with resolve. But the drone's presence didn't go unnoticed for long. Holloway glanced up, spotting the device hovering above. "What the hell is that?" he growled, pulling his gun. Tanner cursed, firing a wild shot that missed the agile drone. The action only cemented their guilt on camera. Within moments, the 911 call reached the state police headquarters. Captain Elena Ruiz, a no-nonsense veteran, recognized Marianne's name instantly. She dispatched a team, her instinct screaming foul play. Meanwhile, Sam's footage began uploading to a live stream on a small independent news site. The internet, ever vigilant, caught the feed within seconds. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #Justice for Marianne and #Racist Cops trended globally. As viewers watched in horror, 5 minutes after the robbery, the first state troopers arrived, sirens blaring. Tanner and Holloway froze, their bravado crumbling as flashing lights surrounded them. Marianne, still cuffed, shouted, "They stole my money and planted drugs. Check the footage." The troopers, led by Ruiz, moved swiftly, disarming the corrupt officers and securing the scene. Holloway dropped the briefcase, the $2,000 spilling onto the asphalt, a damning visual captured by the drone. Ruiz approached Marianne, unlocking her cuffs with a mix of respect and fury. "Judge Delgado, we've got you covered," she said, her voice firm. Marianne nodded, her composure returning as she pointed to the drone. "That saved me," she whispered. The troopers retrieved the planted evidence, and a search of the officer's cruiser revealed the stolen cash stashed under the seat. Back at his setup, Sam watched the live comments flood in shock, anger, and demands for justice. He knew this was bigger than a local story. News outlets from CNN to BBC picked up the feed, broadcasting the raw footage worldwide. Within an hour, Tanner and Holloway were in custody, their careers obliterated. The video, with its unedited truth, became a catalyst, sparking protests and calls for police reform across the globe. Marianne, now safe but shaken, stood by her car as the sun dipped below the horizon. She felt the weight of the day, but also a surge of hope. The world had witnessed injustice and responded. As she prepared to address the media, she knew this was only the beginning. The fight for accountability had just begun, and the shocking events of those 5 minutes would echo for years to come. The night air in Jefferson City was thick with tension as dawn approached. On June 18, 2025, the footage of officers Rick Tanner and Greg Holloway's assault on federal Judge Marianne Delgado had gone viral, amassing millions of views by 10:18 a.m. PKT. The small rural road where the incident unfolded was now a hive of activity. State troopers, Federal agents and a swarm of media vans encircled the scene. Marianne stood under a makeshift tent, her dark eyes scanning the chaos, a mix of exhaustion and determination etched on her face. The $2,000, recovered from the officer's cruiser, lay bagged as evidence, a silent testament to the injustice she had endured. Captain Elena Ruiz approached, her expression grave yet supportive. "Judge Delgado, we've got statements from witnesses and the drone footage is airtight. The FBI's taking over, those two are done for." Marianne nodded, her mind racing. The planted drugs had been analyzed and proven fake, further exposing the officer's scheme. But her relief was tempered by the realization that this was no longer just her fight. The world was watching. Across the globe, the video had ignited a firestorm. Social media platforms buzzed with outrage, #Justice for Marianne trending alongside demands for police reform. Protests erupted in cities from New York to London, with signs reading "End Racist Policing" and "Protect Our Judges." Sam Carter, the journalist whose drone captured the truth, became an overnight hero. His phone rang nonstop with interview requests, but his focus remained on ensuring the footage reached every corner of the internet. Back in Jefferson City, Tanner and Holloway were hauled into the state police headquarters, their uniforms stripped away. In the interrogation room, Tanner's bravado crumbled as he faced the evidence. "It was just a mistake," he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. Holloway, quieter but equally panicked, blamed Tanner, claiming he'd been coerced. The FBI agents, led by Special Agent Lisa Chun, saw through the lies. The drone footage, time-stamped and unedited, showed every move, from the theft to the planted evidence. Charges of robbery, assault, and civil rights violations were filed, with potential life sentences looming. Marianne, meanwhile, prepared to address the media. She stood before a sea of microphones, her voice steady despite the ordeal. "What happened to me was not just an attack on a judge, it was an attack on justice itself. But thanks to a brave journalist and the power of truth, we have a chance to change. I call on every citizen to demand accountability." Her words, broadcast live, resonated deeply. Viewers wept, cheered, and vowed to act. The speech went viral, amassing millions of views within hours. The legal battle began swiftly. Marianne, leveraging her expertise, worked with the FBI to build an ironclad case. Evidence included the drone footage, the recovered cash, and testimonies from troopers who arrived on scene. But the defense for Tanner and Holloway hired a high-profile attorney, arguing the officers acted in good faith under pressure. The courtroom drama promised to be a spectacle, with pretrial hearings scheduled for the following week. Marianne knew the fight would test her resolve, but she was ready. The community of Jefferson City was divided. Some residents, loyal to the local police, whispered that Marianne had provoked the officers. Others rallied behind her, organizing vigils outside the courthouse. A group of young activists, inspired by her story, set up a justice hub to support victims of police misconduct. The town's racial tensions, long simmering, boiled over, with protests met by counter-protests. Marianne, ever the mediator, addressed the crowd one evening, urging unity. "This is not about division, it's about healing," she said. Her voice breaking with emotion. Globally, the impact was seismic. In Pakistan, where it was 10:18 a.m. on June 18, 2025, news channels aired the story, sparking debates on police accountability in their own context. Activists in Lahore held a solidarity march, holding signs with Marianne's image. In the U.S., Congress announced hearings on police reform, with Marianne invited to testify. The $2,000, once a personal donation, now symbolized a larger struggle. With charities worldwide raising funds in her name, Sam Carter's life changed overnight. Offers poured in from major news networks, but he chose to stay independent, launching a crowdfunding campaign to expand his drone journalism. His next target, exposing corruption in other small towns. The drone, now dubbed the Eye of Justice, became a symbol of hope for the oppressed. 5 days after the incident, a shocking twist emerged. Forensic analysis revealed the planted drugs matched a batch used in a previous case handled by Tanner and Holloway, linking them to other unsolved robberies. The FBI raided their homes, uncovering a stash of stolen goods worth tens of thousands. The revelation stunned the world, turning a local scandal into a nationwide investigation. Marianne, reviewing the evidence, felt a surge of vindication. "This goes deeper than I thought," she told Ruiz, her voice firm. The officers' families issued public apologies, claiming ignorance of the crimes, but the damage was done. Tanner's wife left him, and Holloway's children faced bullying. At school, the community grappled with the fallout, while Marianne became a reluctant icon. She received letters from victims across the country, thanking her for her courage. One note, from a young black man in Chicago, read, "You gave me hope when I had none." As Part 2 closed, Marianne sat in her office, the $2,000 now a memory replaced by a movement. The trial loomed, promising revelations that would shake the justice system. She glanced at a photo of her late mother, a civil rights advocate, and whispered, "This is for you." Outside, the world waited, its eyes on Jefferson City, where a single act of bravery had sparked a global awakening. The story was far from over. Part 3 would reveal the courtroom battles and the true extent of the corruption unearthed. The Jefferson City Courthouse buzzed with anticipation at 11:05 a.m. PKT on Wednesday, June 18, 2025. Outside, a crowd of protesters and supporters gathered under a gray sky, their chants echoing off the stone walls. Inside, Federal Judge Marianne Delgado sat at the plaintiff's table, her posture rigid yet composed. The trial of officers Rick Tanner and Greg Holloway had begun, and the world watched via a live stream that had already garnered millions of viewers. The $2,000 theft, once a personal loss, now symbolized a battle for justice that transcended borders. The courtroom was packed. Captain Elena Ruiz sat in the front row, her presence a silent reassurance. Special Agent Lisa Chen, leading the FBI's investigation, stood ready to present evidence. The defense, represented by Slick attorney Victor Lang, argued that Tanner and Holloway acted under duress, claiming a fabricated drug ring threat. But Marianne knew the truth, and the drone footage, now dubbed the Eye of Justice, was her strongest ally. The prosecution opened with Sam Carter's testimony. The wiry journalist, his voice steady despite the global spotlight, recounted the moment he captured the incident. "I saw the officers rob her, plant evidence, and fire at my drone," he said, his eyes meeting Marianne's. The jury watched the unedited footage, gasps filling the room as Tanner's sneer and Holloway's greedy hands filled the screen. The defense objected, calling it prejudicial, but the judge overruled, allowing the evidence to stand. Next came the forensic bombshell. Agent Chun presented the analysis linking the planted drugs to a string of unsolved robberies across 3 states. The chemical signature matches cases from 2022 to 2024, all involving Tanner and Holloway, she declared, unveiling a map dotted with red pins. The courtroom stilled. The officers' faces paled as photos of stolen goods, jewelry, cash, electronics flashed on the screen. Recovered from their homes? The revelation tied them to a network of corruption, implicating other officers, yet unnamed. Marianne took the stand, her voice trembling with emotion but firm with resolve. "They didn't just rob me of money, they robbed me of my dignity. My safety because of my race," she said, her eyes locking with the jury. She recounted the assault, the planted evidence, and the moment she felt helpless. Tears glistened, but her strength shone through. The gallery erupted in applause, quickly. Silenced by the bailiff, Lang cross-examined, probing for inconsistencies, but Marianne's clarity dismantled his efforts. The defense's case faltered. Tanner testified, his voice cracking as he claimed ignorance of the broader scheme. "I was just following orders," he pleaded, but the jury's skeptical glances betrayed their disbelief. Holloway remained silent, his lawyer advising against testimony as more evidence mounted. A surprise witness, a former partner of Tanner's, took the stand, confessing under immunity to participating in earlier robberies. They targeted minorities judges, teachers, anyone they could frame, he admitted, his voice breaking. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Outside, the protests intensified. In Pakistan, it was 11:05 a.m., and news channels like Geo TV aired the trial live, sparking debates on police accountability. Activists in Karachi marched, holding signs with Marianne's image, while in the U.S., Washington, D.C. saw its largest rally yet, with #Justice for Marianne trending at number 1. The global outcry pressured lawmakers, with a Senate hearing scheduled for the following week to address systemic reform. Back in the courtroom, the prosecution unveiled the final twist. A recorded phone call intercepted by the FBI featured Tanner boasting to an unknown accomplice about taking down that uppity judge. The voice on the other end laughed, hinting at a higher up in the police hierarchy. The jury's eyes widened as Chun promised to identify the mastermind. Marianne felt a chill. This wasn't just about 2 rogue cops. It was a conspiracy. The emotional toll weighed heavily. Marianne received a letter from a young black woman in Atlanta thanking her for inspiring her to report her own assault. "You gave me courage," it read, bringing tears to Marianne's eyes. Ruiz offered a supportive hand, whispering, "You're changing lives." But the pressure mounted as threats arrived, anonymous notes warning her to drop the case. She steeled herself, vowing to see it through. The trial reached its climax as the jury deliberated. Outside, Sam Carter set up a live feed, his drone hovering above the courthouse. At 3 p.m. PKT, the verdict came, guilty on all charges. Tanner and Holloway slumped, their faces ashen, as the judge sentenced them to 25 years each, with potential for more as the conspiracy unfolded. The gallery erupted, cheers mixing with sobs of relief. Marianne stood, her heart pounding with victory and sorrow. The aftermath was immediate. The FBI launched a nationwide task force, dubbed Operation I, to root out corrupt officers. In Jefferson City, the police chief resigned, and an internal review began. Marianne addressed the media again, her voice resolute. "This is a victory, but not the end. We must rebuild trust." Her words inspired a global movement, with donations pouring into her charity, now renamed the Delgado Justice Fund. Yet, the mastermind remained elusive. A cryptic message on a seized phone hinted at a city council member's involvement. Setting the stage for Part 4, Marianne, exhausted but unbowed, returned home. The $2,000 a distant memory replaced by a legacy. She lit a candle for her late mother, whispering, "We did it." Outside, the world watched, its hope renewed by her courage. The story continued to unfold, promising revelations that would shake the foundations of power. The clock struck 11:14 a.m. PKT on Wednesday, June 18, 2025, as Jefferson City braced for another seismic shift. The trial of officers Rick Tanner and Greg Holloway had ended with their convictions, but the fallout was far from over. Federal Judge Marianne Delgado sat in her office, the morning light filtering through her blinds, casting stripes across the $2,000 charity donation receipt, now a symbol of her resilience. The Delgado Justice Fund had raised over $500,000 in a week, yet the cryptic phone message hinting at a city council member's involvement gnawed at her. The fight for justice was about to deepen. Outside, the FBI's Operation I task force, led by Special Agent Lisa Chun, raided the home of Councilman Harold Grayson, a silver-haired figure known for his pro-police stance. The operation, broadcast live by Sam Carter's drone, revealed a trove of evidence: ledgers detailing bribes, recordings of Grayson directing Tanner and Holloway, and a safe containing $50,000 in cash linked to the stolen goods network. The world watched, jaws dropping, as the conspiracy expanded from 2 rogue officers to a corrupt official. Marianne received the call from Chun at 11:20 a.m. "We've got him," Chun said, her voice tight with urgency. "Grayson's been funneling money to silence complaints and protect his men. This goes higher, possibly the mayor." Marianne's stomach churned. She had crossed paths with Grayson during community events, his charming smile now a mask for treachery. The revelation hit her like a wave. Her assault wasn't random. It was orchestrated. The media frenzy intensified. In Pakistan, it was 11:14 a.m., and channels like Airy News interrupted programming to cover the raid. Protests in Karachi grew, with signs reading, "Down with Corruption," alongside #Justice for Marianne. In the U.S., CNN aired Grayson's arrest, his face contorted in rage as agents cuffed him. The global audience, already mobilized, demanded answers. Sam's drone feed, now a global sensation, captured Grayson shouting, You'll regret this. A threat that sent chills down viewers' spines. Marianne prepared for another press conference, her resolve hardening. She stood before the cameras, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. This is not just about one councilman. It's about a system that protects the powerful. We will uncover every link. Her words ignited hope, but also fear. That night, a brick crashed through her window, a note attached. Back off, or you're next. Captain Elena Ruiz, stationed outside, tightened security, her jaw set with determination. The trial of Harold Grayson began within days, a high-stakes affair televised worldwide. The prosecution presented the ledgers, linking Grayson to over a dozen officers across 3 counties. A recorded conversation featured him ordering Tanner to deal with the judge after she ruled against a police-backed development project. The jury's faces hardened as the evidence mounted. Marianne testified again, her emotional recounting of the robbery now laced with fury at the systemic betrayal. They thought my skin color made me weak, she said, tears glistening. They were wrong. A shocking twist emerged mid-trial. A whistleblower, Officer Maria Lopez, a Latina colleague of Tanner's, came forward. Under protection, she revealed Grayson's ties to the mayor, who had allegedly greenlit the corruption to secure votes. Lopez's testimony included a meeting she overheard where the mayor laughed about framing the judge. The courtroom erupted, and the live stream crashed from overwhelming traffic. Marianne felt a surge of vindication mixed with dread. This was bigger than she imagined. The emotional toll deepened. Marianne received a video call from a young Pakistani girl, Aisha, who had watched her story. "You're my hero, Aisha," said, her eyes wide. Marianne smiled through tears, the global connection fueling her strength. But the threats escalated. Her phone buzzed with anonymous calls, and Ruiz uncovered a plot to discredit her with fabricated scandals. She leaned on her late mother's memory, whispering, "Guide me each night." Globally, the impact was profound. In Lahore, activists held a candlelight vigil at 11:14 p.m. PKT, mirroring U.S. protests. The UN announced a special session on police accountability, citing Marianne's case. The Delgado Justice Fund swelled to $1 million, funding legal aid for victims worldwide. Sam Carter, now a household name, launched a nonprofit to train citizen journalists, his drone a beacon of truth. The trial's climax came when the mayor, Richard Holt, was subpoenaed. His testimony was a masterclass in evasion, but a leaked email from his account, ordering Grayson to handle the judge problem, sealed his fate. The jury deliberated as the world held its breath. At 3 a.m. PKT, the verdict arrived, Grayson guilty on all counts, with a recommendation to investigate Holt. The mayor resigned within hours. His career in ashes. Marianne stood outside the courthouse, the crowd cheering her name. Ruiz hugged her, whispering, "You did it." But Marianne knew the fight wasn't over. The FBI's investigation hinted at a national network, with leads pointing to other cities. She addressed the media one last time. "This is a step, not the end. We will root out every root of this evil." Her voice carried a promise, echoed by millions online. That night, she sat with a $2,000 receipt, now framed as a reminder. The money was gone, but its loss had birthed a movement. A letter arrived from the UN, inviting her to speak at their session. She smiled, feeling her mother's presence. The world had changed in those 5 minutes on Route 54, and Marianne Delgado was its unyielding heart. The story paused, but the battle for justice raged on, promising revelations in a potential Part 5.